All right, this is our deep dive this morning, and let me just get my notes. What are we doing? What are we doing here? What are we doing? Uh, all right, I think I have the right notes here. And for those of you who don't know, it's deep dive grades 5 6 .com, or you can WhatsApp us plus 592 665 2824. And let's get started. I'm your host, Keith David. And today we're taking a deep dive into the 2024 grade 5 mock exam mathematics paper 2 question 1. And with me, I have a resident expert, in fact, the only expert I know who actually would have participated in the marking of grade 6 exam scripts regionally. So we're not talking Guyana alone, all right? And I'm certain we're going to hear more as to where and how and compare Guyana with other places later on, maybe in future episodes, as well as assisting in the development of questions for CXC, the grade 6 exam questions bank. So she's been at both sides of the aisle, preparing and reviewing. And she is no other than Teacher Ishika. Welcome. I don't know if you want to say something.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So since she's here and we're not we're not paying her, I have to give her a big shout out. You know. Um, so for those of you who need some high class, high end tutoring, be sure to give her a shout out and pass some big bucks on to her. She's currently elementary teacher, grade 5 and 6, and she's the person who I will be asking to help go deeper into a compulsory question. That's question 1, and it deals with patterns and sequences. And for those of you who don't know what it is, not to worry, we're going to get into it. Like I said, it's a deep dive. So we're not just working on the question and giving the answer. It's a lot more, so please stay tuned. And when I said deep dive, we only want to go looking back at the past, i.e., what really should students know going into the exam if they were to properly respond to a question on patterns and sequences, how you should break down the question, and then we'll be, you know, after you finish the question, what happens next. So let's see if we can get into the question itself, you know, and um, and see what's happening there. So the question states, squares are arranged to form the pattern below. And I did my own graphics thing here. For those of you who don't know, this would have been black and white, and you would have gotten these 3 patterns. But I just wanted to show you how the patterns change by highlighting the blue and the purple. All right, so squares are arranged to form the pattern below. Study it carefully and then answer the question that followed. All right, and you have one specific question on the pattern. All right, and that is question 1a, part I, or part 1, however you want to see it. Draw figure 4 of the pattern. So we want the next pattern that you think. And then the second question, which figure will have 21 squares? So now you have to go count and so on. And then thirdly, how many squares will figure 7? So we're at figure 3 here. They want you to draw, all right? So we have the question, but let's go back. Let's take a step back before we even get into the question. Let's talk about what students really should know. All right. Um, we're going to a resident expert here right now, and we're gonna ask her some specific question. And let me look at my notes here to pull out. Looking at this question, Rishika, what do you think would be some of the precursors, some of the prerequisites? We're talking kindergarten, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, because this is a grade 5, grade 6 question. What are some of the things you think, or probably the essential thing going into the exam? And this is a compulsory question, mind you. This is the first question you have to, compulsory means you have to do it, right? Whether you choose to do it last or second, you have to do this question. Um, what are some of the things or the essential concept or knowledge you think would help students
Well, the first thing they have to look at would be number sense, basic counting skills. If you don't have basic counting skills from kindergarten and the other lower grades, sequences might prove challenging for you. Next thing you need to look at is to identify if the sequence is increasing, is it decreasing, do you have circles, do you have squares, even before you attempt the questions. Then you have to look for a pattern. Am I increasing by two? Am I increasing by one? Do I go to the left? Is the sequence increasing to the right? Is it increasing by an odd number? Is it increasing by an even number? So, number sense does not only deal with counting, but you also have to know odd numbers, even numbers, if you're adding, if you're subtracting, and so forth. So everything dealing with numbers. Do I add the squares to the bottom of the grid? Do I skip a space? Do I put it to the top? Where do I put that? So those would be some basic things.
You know,
And then
let me cut you here. Let me cut you because it seems as if you're suggesting that the work you do in grade 5, grade 6, you really have to stand on the things, the simple things you'd have learned in the lower grades. That's what you seem to be saying. Because this number sense thing seems kindergarten, grade 1 to me seems very basic. And people take that for
yes,
granted. People seem to
yes,
think,
I think too many parents and too many educators they take that for granted. And we usually say that is our play stage and we want the children to play, but learning should also be taking place because it has shown that by the age of 7, children would have done most of their learning, and as they grow bigger from that stage, it's harder for them. And so, if you do not put in those basic skills, it will be a struggle in the upper grades. So yes, basic things. And if you miss that foundation, everything else will be a struggle. So math is not hard, it's not a difficult thing, but when the foundation is missing, then it becomes difficult because children are wondering what to do next. I mean, we might say, well, can't you count one, two, three, four, five? Well, yes, they can count, but application is important. They don't know how to use that. And so they run into difficulties.
and sequence patterns and sequences is really counting. And here's a funny thing. Here's a funny thing. Um, counting, rote counting, we know of. Rote is one, two, three, four, and you can go up to 100, 1,000, a million, whatever. But there are different types of counting, like skip counting. I think skip counting, we know we associate that a lot with our times table or our math facts, 2, 4, 6, 3, 6, 9, and so on and so on. That, in a sense, that's the beginning of sequences, isn't it? You know?
Yes, correct.
Um,
Skip counting is your sequence right there. Skip counting because most times the sequence to find the sequence you're increasing, but we can yes we can
so
say
when you
that
skip count, you're
skip
increasing by
counting.
2 or 3 by a
Yes, you
standard thing, and then
increase
it
by two or
sequences.
three.
All
Correct.
right.
Your tables, and I would have noticed that in the worksheets for the ministry for all the grades they have skip counting, even grade 6, grade 5, and they start at a basic level. And so it's very important. We might be wondering why they're bringing this again, but sometimes children do not grasp the concept, all the children. And so that is why it's necessary for us to keep going back to skip counting or number sense, sequencing, and those things.
All right, so here we are. We got a little preview, a little taste of what you should know before. I'm sure there's a lot more to it. Um, we did an analysis. We studied all the mock exam. We're not going directly to the grade 6 NGSA or the PEP or the SCA yet. Mock exam. And we have two things to report here. One, we try to do a predictive analysis. Sequences. Will sequences, patterns and sequences come? The answer is flat out yes. Right? Whether it comes as a compulsory question or not, it's going to come. It came in all the papers prior. And why will it come too? Not because it came in the past. Sequences is very, very important for algebraic, right? Algebra, that is. You say algebraic thinking, but algebra. and all the other fancy maths that you do in high school and university. So this is a foundation thing that they need to test you on. So it's gonna come, right? The question is just whether it's a compulsory question, an optional question, when it comes in a paper one or whatever the case may be. The second thing we will need to report is that there are different types of sequences. And oftentimes you see students caught up with the arithmetic sequences. And there are different types: arithmetic, geometric, exponential, triangular, and so on. And the arithmetic is the easiest. It just means the sequence is increasing or decreasing by a fixed amount. All right? And oftentimes the question is on arithmetic, but we have noticed other types of sequences. Sometimes there are sequences where they tell you, for example, there's a bingo match going on, and they call out these numbers, and they ask you to put the next number, and they already have the list of numbers there. You just have to look at the list and pull it out. You don't have to think, you don't have to calculate, you don't have to use a formula or anything of the sort. All right? But sequences, patterns and sequences will come, something that's key, and let's get prepared for it. Let's get into the actual question, because we can talk here all day about the prerequisites and what should come prior. But let's see if we can get directly into the question. We're looking at the question here, and what is the first thing to Rishika? What do you think is the first thing? You're in the exam, because we're going to ask you afterwards what you see on the scripts. But you're in the exam, what would you like students to be doing as they look at the paper? This is the first question for 2024, probably a second or third question for another year. But let's pretend it's 2024, June 2024, and we're looking at this paper. This is the first question. We've already, actually, don't let's say we already do our 10 minutes. Let's say we just got our paper. What do you advise students to do? They get a paper, they're asked now to start reading, they see this question. Go ahead.
Well, most obviously, when you get a paper, I would encourage you to do reading, because when you read, first you start thinking. It gives you an idea of what you know, what you don't know, which question you're going to attempt. Of course, question one, you have to attempt question one, because that is a compulsory question. Most time it's a sequence-based question. I usually tell my kids in school that in maths you have to see things. And for math, it is important that you see things. Now, based on the sequence, I would say, okay, the first thing you do, you count. You count, you put how many squares you have, how many circles. You count your first figure, you count your second figure, you count your third figure. So when you count, you write that down right at the top of those shapes, of those figures. And then you look to see if you can decipher the pattern even before you go to answer those questions. So let's say if you count figure one and you start with three, and figure two, you have five, and then you have seven. Now you see three, five, seven. Now that is increasing by two. I will tell them to draw a line between them and put plus two, because all the sequence, they have to have something in common. Because you don't want to make that mistake that, okay, sometimes children, they get distracted, they get carried away, they lose their focus. And so if you do that writing first before you attempt those questions, to actually write your answers, you have some sort of work in there waiting for you, so that you don't lose your focus, and then somewhere along the line you go and you add one or you add three, right? Because you might say, okay, I have three here, and then you go and you add three and you get six instead of getting five. So there are different mistakes, and you want to avoid those mistakes. So you determine that sequence first before moving forward. I would advise persons to do that. Of course, they would have an idea of the question when they use their 10 minutes reading time. So it's not that they're just going to determine the sequence before even knowing what the question is about. But usually they ask how many, always ask you to draw a sequence, and then you want to know how many squares or how many circles or buttons in a certain sequence and so forth. So that first setting out will help in those other questions.
All right. So what I did was, you were going through some of the do before you put pen to paper is I try to pull up this little booklet that looks specifically at the mock mathematics paper 2 2024. And the first question was a sequence question, as we were saying, patterns and sequences. And we have a clip from that little booklet. And really and truly, it addresses specifically what Jurishika is saying, and that is we are trying to break up what the question is really asking for. Now let me pull back up this image that we had to really show. In the first instance, we have how many squares do we have? Three at the bottom, two in the middle, one at the top. And it seems as if you're adding a square at every row. So one becomes two, two becomes three, three becomes four, and the next one, three becomes two becomes three, and so on. All right. Um, so so let me just bring back up the other imagery there, and it shows clearly now. You can see this thing in so many ways. You can add a square at every row to give you the increase in numbers, or you can add the square at the back of it to the left or right. But one thing is clear is that you're maintaining that stairway. Yes, stairway, that's the right thing. You're maintaining a stairway, you know? And the stairway seems to be getting stronger and stronger, or more solid, if you want to put it that way. All right? Um, the other thing is, it seems to be suggesting you want to maintain that pattern. You don't want to end up with a perfect square or rectangle or a star. So it seems to be suggesting you want to maintain that stairway um, diagram pattern. When they ask you to draw the fourth pattern, your fourth pattern must look like a stairway, but must be increasing. All right. So let me see if we can look at probably some of the things now that they've read it. They've highlighted the keywords. Squares, I would say square key would be a keyword. Draw would be a keyword because somebody who would have been working in a classroom might think when we're doing sequences, we always calculate and we always put a number, right? But in this specific example, they asked me to draw something, and they often ask for that. The calculation, the formula coming next. We got another question though. All right, but as I think about it, the bottom line is you want to put pen to paper and say, okay, figure one has how many squares? As the jury said, noted, six. Figure two, well, if they're adding three, as we highlighted in the previous picture, where we had the tree yellow and the tree purple, it seems to be as they move from one figure to the next, they're adding three squares. So we move from six in the first figure to nine, six plus three is nine, to 12 in the third figure. And you really need to take stock or take note of the increasing pattern here. All right, we're going 6, 9, 12. It's not like if you escape counting by 3, 3, 6, 9, 12,
Three
15.
times table, I might say.
That's
Three
a tree.
times table. Three times table. Tables are
Exactly.
important.
You know, so
But you can also draw strokes if
oh
you can
yes,
also draw
yes,
strokes. Remember,
yes,
when you're doing an exam, you're working for the most marks.
yeah,
So whatever working you have, whatever is going to help
yeah,
you can do that. You can use that.
yeah, yeah. So you don't have to put a number. You can put a visual. Some if that's the way you work. Not all kids are gonna feel comfortable. Somebody just okay. I see three, 1, 2, 3 strokes. One, whatever the case may be. All right. But clearly, we're seeing a pattern of trees going by trees, skip counting by. And if you know your tree times table, if you've been taught to skip count by trees, this is gonna be easy. It's gonna just pop out for you. You know. And whilst we're taking a long time here going through this question, all of this processing is going to go through your mind pretty fast. And I suspect within seconds, you're going to see the trend, you're going to see the increase. And right away, if you're saying 6, 9, 12, you're going to clearly see, oh my, all right, the next thing has to be 15, because I'm adding another 3, right? Whether I add a 3 at the left, I add a 3 at the right, very, very, very clear, you
But
know?
it's important to maintain the pattern, the step pattern. So you don't want to just go and add three at the top of the shape or three at the bottom. And then, as it was said by Mr. David before, we don't want to end up with a square when you clearly have a stairway. And that is why You need to see things in math. So whatever you see there, whatever you started with, you must end with that same thing, same visual when you do your pattern, when you draw your pattern.
I'm looking at my notes here, and this might seem counterintuitive. In fact, it might seem like we're spending too much time on this question. But oftentimes, when you see a question statement, and there's a question statement here, because you got a statement that says squares are arranged to form a pattern, study it carefully, and then answer the question below, right? And you have three questions tied to this. And this would have come out when you were doing a 10-minute reading going through. You can't write at that time. You're just reading. You have 10 minutes just to read and review and try to understand, right? And clearly you'd have seen that three questions are attached to this statement, attached to this figure that they give you, right? And so my thinking here is that during that time, or maybe even after the 10 minutes up and you're actually answering the question, you should go a step further when they say read carefully, study it carefully. And one of the things you would want to do is note that not only do you have to draw, but they're going to be asking you for other figures, right? So you can start making some notes there in your working section. Somebody might say a scrap section, but it's really your working section to show your working, because you have the answer lines where you put the answer, and that square box here where you have the A and that black and white, that section there, the paper is usually like that. You have a blank space there, and you're asked to show your working there. And right away, you should be writing figure 1 is 6, figure 2, 9, figure 3, 12. And so you have something there written down, and you're not going to make an error. I don't know what you think, Jushik. I don't know. I
Well,
would want.
actually, that's an important thing because I would usually tell my kids at school, they write from figure 1 to 10, figure 1
Ah,
to 10.
all
So
right,
you
all
go
right.
through. But
I
one
see.
common mistake sometimes I see is that they lose a focus. And so instead of adding 3, maybe they begin to add 2.
Hmm.
So we have to be careful. They have to be careful with that. Make sure that's another thing with checking over. You make sure you add 3. So yes, I tell them to do that.
So
Figure
before you
1,
get
figure
to
2, figure 3,
be,
figure 4.
before you get to question 2I, you would have had like a list of figure 1, figure 2, figure 3, figure
Correct,
4, figure
correct,
5,
correct,
till the 10.
correct.
You would have
Yes.
given, I would have said 4, 5,
No,
6.
no,
You
we go
added
up to
10.
10 because I think that's a general range, that answer where
uh,
you have so many squares in what figure, it usually falls before that 10 mark there.
so you're,
So you
based
already
on your
have,
experience, you're saying that
yes,
if they go to 10, all the
yes.
other questions to follow, they would have already covered it.
Time consuming thing also, some children would try to draw to
Ah,
reach to the figure that has the amount of squares or circles or dots inside. And I would not advise that. It's easy to find the pattern if you're adding 2, if you're adding 3.
right, right.
And if you're drawing, it takes up a lot of time and you might not be able to answer the other questions. They get the answer very well. They get the answer very well because they draw, they take their time, they
Right,
draw figure
right,
4,
right.
figure 5, figure 6. Maybe the answer is at figure 9. But
Get you.
think of, and because we would have told them that the patterns, they have to be the same. They draw patterns to look like that stairway for all the figures. Do you imagine how time
Yeah,
consuming
I agree.
that is?
I
And so they
agree.
lose time.
I
So
agree.
we want to encourage them to just put numbers and don't go and draw because they have to draw the first figure. Sometimes they're thinking that they have to draw for that other question. So that is something you need to be aware
So
of
basically,
to
stay
encourage
focused,
them. Yes.
give what you're asked for, and watch. In this case, when you go beyond the fourth figure, which you're asking for, write the numbers, write the number of squares for the
So just
rest.
figure
Don't go
one
drawing
equal,
everything out.
let's say figure one equal two, figure two equal four, figure three equals six, and you show that and you do that until you reach to figure 10.
Because
Usually it doesn't go beyond that.
so we're going to number 2 now, 2I, as they have it here. Which figure will have 21 squared? And here again, I'm thinking 21, we did add in 3, 3 and 21. It seems if we're doing something like multiples, timetables. it reminds me that when you skip count by three, when you're doing your multiples, when you're doing times table, if you're really good at these things stand out right away. Because if you're saying to yourself, figure 4 should have 15, right? Then you're easy to extract 15 and 3 is 18 and 3 is 21. So it's within that 10 length and 10 figure range that you're talking about here again. So when they would have done that, right away when they look at their notes, they see before they even reach the number 10, figure 10, they already see 21. Some
Correct.
figure got 21
That's
already.
correct, and that's the ideal because sometimes when they finish the first question, they get a little bit flustered, and they can lose a focus and they can go and make a mistake somewhere. But if you pull out that information, and for all the questions, the graphs and so forth, if you pull out all that information before,
Beforehand.
yes, it is
Beforehand.
there.
That's very
Yes,
important.
it is
Beforehand.
there waiting for you. So you don't have to go now and say, let me see how much squares. I have to go back. I have to count again. Did I do the right thing? And so important that you pull out that information
So
first.
as we see, we're spending time breaking down and breaking up, doing a deep dive with this question because if you go and you look at all the mock exams right now, you will see at least 10 questions, long answer question sequences. All right. And for the most part, they all follow this trend. Right. If you can go into the first part of the statement and extrapolate to the figure 10, I think there were two where you had tables and they did the tables for you actually, and they leave some blanks for you to fill in, and that's easy as pie. That if you ever get something like that, and you're practicing the figure 1 to 10 extrapolation thing, that you would score 100% on that one. So we got to question 3i as they have it here. How many squares will figure 7? You see, we're going through, we're giving the answer. So we know for 2i, 21 squares. Which figure will have 21 squares? Figure 4 will have 15. Figure 5 will have 18. Figure 6 will have 21. Say figure 6 got 21. And they're asking now for figure 7, right? We ain't reached the 10th figure yet. And here again, you see, you already write down the answer. You already got your table there, the answer there. And so you would have done the work all because you would have read the initial statement. You've, I don't want to say that a deep dive, and you wrote out everything up to 10 as the you suggested. But break up your question, see what it's asking for, make your notes, simplify it, and look how the other questions just fall into place. You have your answers there already. So you just don't have to write it in. And the working is already there for questions 1i, 2i, 3i. I don't know what else to say about this question. I don't know. This is like good preparing. This is good preparation here. I don't know if you had anything else to add. Maybe what? Let's look at. You've done some marking of the scripts. What do you think would be one of the things you'll be disappointed to see students have on the paper? Because this doesn't seem very complicated, but yet I can
Well,
tell you
yes, we
people.
can say it's not complicated because we know it, and nothing is complicated for people who know it. But as I would have said before, some children do not have foundational skills. They cannot count, and you cannot only learn to count backward. You have forward. You have to learn to count backward. You have to learn to see things, and sometimes they're struggling with addition, and so you would see them adding a different number, right? You would see them drawing and they counted wrong. So if they, and counting is important because if they count the number of squares on that first sequence wrong on that figure, then all the others will be wrong. So we want to make, so those are some mistakes. How much the sequence is increasing by the drawing. Drawing is important. Where we add those squares to do the fourth figure. So
Do
those
you
are,
do you ever see do you ever see students just simply skipping a question altogether?
yes, yes,
Like
yes,
you see them going good, good, and then there's a blank, and you're like, this thing is so simple.
yes, yes, yes. Lots of children skip lots of questions. And that's why we have the maths grade that we have when all the analysis is done, because we're missing the foundation. We're missing the foundation. A lot of children and the teachers alone cannot do the work. Learning begins at home, and so parental involvement is very important
I think you're being very kind.
from when from when they're
I
babies.
think you're being kind. I think what you're trying to say, and I'm going to say it because I don't have a classroom to worry about. I think you're trying to say that there's only so much can happen in the classroom, and there's need for extra practice because even though the concepts are taught in the
Yes,
classroom and some
especially
practice,
especially at the lower level,
you need some extra practice
especially.
at home. You need the
Yes,
parents. Parents
that's
need to
correct.
work with the kids.
Maths
Straight
is a
up.
thing that needs practice, needs practice. I would say you have to train your brain. You have to train your brain how to think, right? You have to train your brain to focus, train your brain to work, because if I'm doing something today and I come next week and I don't practice, I won't remember it. The kids won't remember it. And at this level, it's a combination of topics.
It brings to
So
mind. Let me
the
cut
grade
you.
the grade 5 and 6
Uh-huh.
work does not begin in grade 5 and 6.
Right.
I want to think, I mean, I know it starts in grade 4
Right.
foundation, but even before grade 4, it begins at those lower levels. It begins in grade 1, in
But you're talking about
nursery year 1 and 2,
something that
and
comes
all
to
those
mind saying
kinds of things.
automaticity in the sense that sometimes they might know it, but they ain't had enough practice.
That's
So they
correct.
take a long, I got to think, she did this, uh, and it's the practice that gets them, what is
and
it,
and and
fitter.
and sometimes they don't want to write because they think they're too big to write, and that's where the mistake comes in. Visuals very important, so they're thinking in their head, they're saying this thing is easy, because some of them will tell you that it's easy, and then they end up with a wrong number because they did not write down. And I'm sure if they would have written down, they would have done the working, they would have counted.
Okay, we're gonna miss that point. So before we miss that point, let me just recap on that point. You're trying to say as the ideas flow to your head, jot the jot it down on the paper, put pen paper. Don't just keep it in your head and try to figure it all out. You have a working section. Write what you're thinking on the paper because you can see what you're thinking, and if you're going off track, you can always look have something visually in front
Yes,
of you.
yes, yes.
Put pen to paper, people. Put pen to paper. Write down what you're thinking. Don't say, "Yeah, I can figure it out in my head and put the answer." Write down the working there because if there's a mistake along the way, you can see it, right? And sometimes you might be thinking one thing and writing something else, But if
Exactly,
all right, we
exactly.
want to emphasize that point. I didn't want that point to be lost in the conversation because people might not have understood what she's trying to say. She's saying the kids, as you're thinking what to do, I gotta divide. I gotta write this. Not write, just write it. Write everything out, right? Remember, you're given a working section, a piece of paper to write all your work in. So scribble out everything, right? The answer section is that line there. You said the bottom, is dotted line. This is where you write your answer, but that's square, a rectangular, sorry. A rectangular vertical box there with the black and white is for you to do your working. So this is where you scribble everything all in that fancy way and all your bad handwriting. Put it there, because I think when the people are marking, they look at the working section. I don't know. They got some
Yes, yes, we look at it.
because there are clearly some questions that have 1 mark, but there are others where you have 2 marks and so forth, where the answer is not the only thing
That they're
that we
looking
get a mark.
for.
So,
Yes.
all right. So she knows it. Put your working. Your working is really, really important in paper two working. Now, what
Well,
about paper one?
it's important. Let me stop you. It's also important for paper 1,
Paper one.
even though we don't see it, because I mean, like, not because you have A, B, C, D, you're gonna just circle A, B, C, D, and you're finished. You're working for the most marks, and so you want to make sure that you work out those questions, and you would have gotten the correct
So
answer.
you're
And
given
I'm thinking,
paper to write on to do the working in paper one as well.
yeah, I think people we the examiners, they do not uplift those working papers. So yes, children can request, pupils can request those working
So you can
papers.
ask to scrap paper.
So yes, yes.
Fair enough. You can ask to scrap paper, do your scrap work there, even though you're selecting A, B, C, D. Still do the working. It helps. It helps. You might be amazed
It
to
more
see.
than helps. We want the right answer. We want the right answer.
you know. So they did a question. This is just one as this is 1A actually. There's a 1B which we'll do in another episode. So you read the question, you broke it up, you give the answers. Um, if the exam was just on this aspect alone, what would follow next? You finish all your questions now, you got some extra time. Some people's complain, we don't have enough time, by oh boy, we don't have enough time. But you have some time. You were one of the few who, you know, you got 10 minutes remaining, you got 5 minutes remaining. What do we do that time, teach? What do we do that time?
We check over, and and looking over is important. Looking over means that you read each question, ask yourself, did I answer this question? Did I do what this question required of me? Did I do what the question asked me to do? Did I write exactly what I needed to write? Because transposing numbers, they're sometimes a problem. Some persons might see a 4 and they go and they write a 5, they write a 2. And so when you check over, it's not usually when we tell children to check over, they scan that paper. Checking over is not about scanning the paper. Checking over, you want to you want to touch those things. When you're reading too, you want to identify keywords, right? You want to underline them, you want to make sure that you would have written the correct number, you would have done the correct calculations, correct operations. So you check back everything from the top of that question to the bottom of that question once you have time. Did I do? Because you don't want a question that asks you for a number and you put draw in, right? You don't want a question to ask you for a fraction and you just give a whole number. So all those are things that you want to look for. Did I do what I am supposed to do to satisfy this question? So we check over numbers, we check over sequences. Did I add two to everything? Did I count correctly? And those are some of the things that we want to look for in this question. Did I draw? Do I have that step pattern there that I started with? Do I still have that step pattern? Did I add one to each row? Um, is it I was supposed to add one and I added two? Did I forget anything? And so we want to check everything. I have six here. I'm supposed to have nine here. After nine, I'm supposed to have 12. And so all those things, we want to do all those. That is checking over to make sure that we would have done the correct thing.
I know sometimes what I find is that you might know the answer is 6. You think you'd have written down 6, but for some reason
You have
you
something else
you put
written there.
16 or 60 or something, and you only through going over the last. You're like,
And we don't
how did
want
I
to
get here?
we don't want to trace over answers. We want to erase neatly. If we have to erase, we want to erase neatly. We want to write legibly, right? So our sevens must not look like nines, and our zeros must not look like six. And those are fine things you check back for. Those are the things. Make sure proper formation, which are numbers and so forth.
All right, so we've gone through that, and there are a few things we wanted to say, but we're going to save that for another episode. But the bottom line is that sequences can be a simple arithmetic sequence where you can actually see it. Now, there you have a formula, and we'll talk about it in the next episode. We'll use another example from the mock exam. And there's a sequence formula, there's a rule. One of the questions they would ask is state the rule. So they not only ask you how many circles or squares or what's the next figure. Sometimes they ask you what is the rule, and that's where now you get into coming up with a formula. And that's we're gonna spend an entire episode on that because that requires a little bit more effort. In particular, if it's not an arithmetic sequence, if it's something else. All right. So we're gonna do another episode, we promise, on that. Um, the other thing with this booklet is that we capture the questions from the past paper, but we do precursor questions. So there's simple questions that lead up to your understanding, give you some more practice. And here again, this is the bad word. I think practice is a horrible word. When kids hear practice, practice, you go home, you have like 20 something math sums to do. You're up till 9, 10, 11 working them. That's the only way for math that I know of, and every teacher will tell you that. So if you're going home and you're forgetting your homework, I'm sorry, I can tell you what grade you're going to get if you're not working on the weekends, you know. And I think it's about time when the mock exam is there, and you should be, putting aside some of your extracurricular activities and just focusing on it. One thing I want to say that teacher Ishika did not say is that there are quite a lot of you who are thinking that 2 days, 3 days before the exam, boy, I can stop everything and I can read all the books. I can read all the books for maths, for English, for social studies, for science, everything. I can do everything in that 2 days. I can just burn the midnight oil and come to the exam. All will be well. Um, for those people who do that, I can tell you what grade you're getting. I can tell you, and it's not one of them top grades. You have to be working throughout the term, come holiday, rainfall, whatever the case may be. All right. So on that note, I am going to let Teacher Rishika have the last word.
Yes, same encouragement. You have to start now. You cannot wait until the day before. We don't want to see in your paper you want to sleep, and you cannot function during the day. Now, every day, you have to read something, you have to do something every night, especially maths. Maths is, I think maths is one of the most challenging subjects for pupils in elementary school. I can say that for sure, but it's challenging because of lack of practice. So I want to encourage you to start now. Do not wait 2, 3 nights before the exams. Start now. Every day counts. Every day counts. Practice, practice, read, read, and you're going to be successful. That's all for now.
All right. Um, so thank you for joining us, and see you in a couple of days.